And we've been talking about doing this for a while, and now we're finally doing it. So hopefully you guys will enjoy this video slash podcast feature here at Your Prep Sports. We threw around some names here, and we landed on the Seven Nation podcast. And the reasoning behind that is, and the other guy that you see on the screen is Ryan Merkin from Your Prep Sports. If you haven't seen him before at a game, you probably haven't been looking hard enough. We are, this is going to be a weekly podcast, and what we'll do is, and video cast, we will hit on the 7 schools in the Your Prep Sports coverage area with a topic or an item on each of those schools. If you're unaware, it's the Iowa City schools, City High, West High, Liberty, Regina. Then we have West Branch, Solon, Clear Creek, Amana. We're going to hit items of those every week and discuss certain items on them. We're going to try to do some other podcasts too, maybe previewing some games, but this is going to be kind of a review or a topic-based podcast, video cast. So hopefully you guys like this. It's something new. It's a new item here at Your Prep Sports. And I'll let Ryan speak for a minute because I'm blabbering here.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about this. I think it's going to be really cool. If you haven't seen myself out or Rob shooting photos, that means that we're doing a good job, right? Because we're supposed to be staying away from people this year. So if you haven't seen me, it's because I'm doing my best to be socially distant from everyone at games.
I get weird looks too because I have that mask that you pull up from your neck, and people are like, "Is this guy trying to rob me?"
It's been a hard transition for me because the people that do know me know I love to go to games. I love to talk to people and stuff. And so it really is like, and I've kind of tried to avoid some press boxes, and I love all the people that are at the schools that are up in the press box. You get to be friends with those people. You look forward to seeing them on Friday nights or hit volleyball or whatever. And I'm up in the corners of gyms now and like the very corners of the stands at the bigger stadiums and stuff. So I'm the guy that looks like he's watching a high school game with a laptop on his lap, trying not to get rained on or drop my phone down underneath the bleachers, which I've already done once this year. So
hopefully as this pandemic moves on and we it seems like we're making progress as we go along here, hopefully there'll be more fans in the stands and we can interact with people more. If you see either one of us at a game, just come up and say hi. We'd be happy to talk with you. So without further ado, it would have been great to do this earlier in the year if we could have gotten this together a little bit sooner,
right.
But we've gotten to the point where we're moving into the last week of the regular season for high school football and then the playoffs. So we're going to hit on some important stuff here for us not getting to it earlier. We're at least getting it at a time where good things are happening right now. Important things are happening.
Right. This is a great time of year for high school football, even on a pandemic shortened season. The only problem is I feel like I was just telling somebody the other day, I feel like this is the time of year that I really start to learn what we have with some of our area teams. And you start to kind of feel like you have a good feel for what the teams that you cover are this year, especially with the Iowa City schools missing 3 weeks. It's like, I don't have the same feel that I normally do, but at the same time, this is the most exciting time of the year for high school football. Even with that, normally you're doing stories, you're breaking down every district scenario where, who's in the playoffs, who's out. Everybody's in this year. But still, it's that time of year where you get some new matchups in the playoffs. So that's, I think, what people enjoy, especially about a year like this year where everybody's in. You're going to have some potentially interesting matchups right away.
Great points, and it's going to be interesting to see how we've kind of received some hints on how this playoff thing's going to work and how it's going to look. Do you have any kind of idea how you think it's going to work with everybody being involved?
It sounds like they're going to start. It's everybody loves the bracket, myself included, right?
Yeah.
Who doesn't like to get a nice bracket? You think NCAA tournament style,
Sure.
Then you pencil in who you think is going to go to the end, but it's going to be reseeded like they did a couple years ago. Sounds like maybe a couple times. And this, I will say, from my standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. Especially in the pandemic year, it sounds like they're going to try to use geography as much as possible while separating teams, by record and things like that. But so I think they're going to try to do a couple they'll start out and they'll put people in pods, so it sounds like pods of 4. So you'll be able to say like, these winners play. So you'll know who your next opponent is. Then they'll shuffle that up and do that again. And you'll be able to say like, here's, so we're down to X number of teams. These 4 are in a pod, these winners play, and they'll do that kind of out till we get teams in the dome, which is always, the semifinals are always that final pod of 4. So it sounds like you're going to have to kind of look at it as like 3 mini tournaments, within each, or a bunch of mini tournaments of 3 within each class. But there's still a lot to figure out there, or for them to, release there. There's going to have to be buys as you get from, in a class with 54 teams or whatever. Ultimately, you're trying to get down to that number like 32, 16, for what used to be the first round, quarterfinals, semifinals, et cetera. So you got to figure out how they're going to do that as far as, is it going to be like, 4th place team from one district playing 5th place team from another district, or how are they going to do that early? And be interesting to see how all that plays out, because what would be week 8, the first week of the playoffs after the 7-week regular season, I think there will be a lot of like games, those first couple weeks, which is fun, I think, for kids when you have teams that are similar. Everybody thinks of that as the semifinals, 2 9-0 teams or whatever, but I just think it's fun for kids when you have 2 teams that are really evenly matched to play. And that's ultimately what this is about, right? Is watching those kids have a chance to compete. Again, I keep saying this, but especially on a year like this, when 2 months ago, nobody had any idea. I think that gets forgotten sometimes, especially in high school sports. I mean, I know there's still sports that aren't playing, or still states that aren't playing high school football right now. So a long time ago, or not that long ago, we're like, are we going to have football? And then we get a couple months into it and you kind of fast forward past that. So it's good that we're talking about this right now, Rob. It really is. Because I wasn't sure, not all that long ago, I wasn't sure if we'd be talking about this in October.
Or if, you always wonder with the unknowns if you get through a season. Iowa City obviously had to be sidelined because of the online only learning model, but now back on the field and moving again towards perhaps winning a state championship. That's the ultimate goal for everyone. And if we use college football as an indicator, I think the high school playoffs are going to be wild, man. You can have some upsets going on, some crazy stuff that people don't expect.
I agree. And you look at it too, like I said, the Iowa City schools, what do you make of some of these teams? Like, I have people ask me that. What do you make of a team like West High? I mean, they've looked fantastic. They're 3-0. They're 3-0, and there's other teams that are now going into this would be the last week, so week 7,
Right.
So there's other teams that have, and as I do my previews each week, before I go to games, it's interesting when you pull up a team's schedule and you're like, oh, they have 4 games. Like either they had to miss a couple games or their opponents had to miss a couple games. And what I think has been really cool is the number of teams that have had to miss games and the number of places that have just said, hey, let's just make sure our kids have a chance to play on Friday night. Like, we'll come play you, you come play us. Cedar Rapids Jefferson went to West Marshall. Neither of those schools. When was the last time, a 4A school went on the road and played? I think they're 2A maybe. But it's like people just saying, hey, like, we have the opportunity to play. We're healthy. Our team's able to play right now. Like, let's make sure we take advantage of these opportunities. And I was having lunch with my wife and daughter a couple Fridays ago. I just thought this one was so cool. We don't cover any of these teams, but I got a tweet. Somebody tweeted at me, and they were like, hey, West Liberty's looking for – this is Friday at like 12:30.
Yeah.
And they're like, West Liberty's looking for a game tonight. I can't remember who they had that night that found
North
out they had to.
Maybe? Was it North Cedar or one of Tipton?
Tipton, I think maybe, that had to quarantine. And I looked at it and, I retweeted it and I turned to my wife and she was kind of like, what was that? And I was like, man, these schools have been able to pull this off, but I'm like, I don't think you're playing in 6 hours.
Yeah.
We finish lunch. I get back in my vehicle. We go home. I take my phone out. They already had a game. I think Lisbon went up and played them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's the stuff that just kind of makes you happy. It's like, how incredible is that? I mean, you've done this for a long time. You know how football coaches are. They were game planning for that 10 days ago.
Yeah.
And practiced all week to prepare for an opponent. And then they're at their lunch. I'm just picturing the high school football coach, teaching his fifth period class and then being like, well, the last 4 days of practice were preparation were out the window. What do we know about this team? They're pulling up stats on the computer just like the rest of us. So
watching video as they're on the bus going to West Liberty.
right. And that's what I think is so cool is it's kind of become that we all talk about rolling the ball. It's like when we were kids, right? You're just going to show up and play who you play. But I think everybody's done a really pretty good job of giving kids opportunities to play.
Yeah, it's been cool. And they obviously, it was great foresight that they decided to let all the teams into the playoffs, knowing that there were going to be some hiccups along the way, and they've gotten there.
Right.
They've navigated those hurdles, and now they're moving towards the playoffs, and I think it's going to be wild.